Hello everyone, it's Miss Darling in the studio. Welcome. And if you're here for the first time, my name is Miss Darling, a nickname given to me by my daughter Swoop. And so I just decided to use it for the name of my channel. And here we go. Today I have a fun project, I think, for us to work on. I hope maybe if you have the products on hand, you might want to create right along with me. If not, sit back, relax, and just enjoy watching the process, and you can get yourself some of the supplies that you will need at a later date. Anyway, so let me tell you what I'm going to first show you what we're going to be doing. So if you're not interested in this at all, feel free to leave. But anyway, hopefully most of you will want to learn how I made these. These are tags that I got from cardstock, and this is treated cardstock. Now, if you were to run your fingers over this, you would see, I don't know if you can, how well you can see that, like if that may be tilted or something. Anyway, it's an embossed surface. Some people might call it a relief, or you could call it embossing, but the design is raised. It's a little bit three-dimensional, and then I colorized the card as well. So here's one group that I made, and this all came from one sheet of cardstock. All these beautiful tags. And then this one here is a little different. Here we go with a lot of numbers. And this was from a second piece of cardstock. All of these great tags. Now, you don't have to pull tags from what you make. You could do other types of things, like you could do postcards, greeting cards. You could do bookmarks, art cards, just whatever. I happen to enjoy making a lot of tags. I use these all the time in my journals, and so that's what I did. And using my acrylic templates, which I'll show you at the appropriate time, it makes it super easy to get maximum things cut out of your overall end product. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Here's how I decided to do this, so I could, in a sense, mass produce and not do things just one at a time. I drew the outlines of the tags that I wanted to make and put as many as I could get on a single sheet of cardstock. And I have two different basic layouts. Here's one, and here's the other one. You can see it's a little slightly different. This one has two large tags, a medium tag, a small one, and then a bookmark. This one has one large tag, two mediums, two small, and a bookmark, and then just, like maybe something that you could use on top of something else. Anyway, just to fill the space up. So now I decided I would make these available in my Etsy shop. So if you are interested in acquiring just the basic layouts, it'll just be, two files, and just print them off as many times as you want to, and then you don't have to do it yourself. Otherwise, just make outlines of whatever shapes and products that you want to make from yours and go with it. So there's my basic layout, which I've then copied off on different types of paper. So I have this sort of mottled, it's kind of a beigey not quite tan, a little lighter than tan, but I think you could probably see it's got this mottled feature to it. Tell you what kind of paper it is if I knew, but I don't. It was purchased a long time ago. Then I have some of this darker tan, and so I printed those off. So that's sort of, you know, the background color. I did that in several, well, I guess all of them are the same. Now, you can print it out on any kind of cardstock. I do recommend cardstock because you're going to be putting a water medium on top, and so you want some sturdiness there to be able to manage that. I have a sheet of kind of off-white that I pulled out to mop up my jelly plate, because we're going to be using a jelly plate to colorize these. And so this was, when I went from one color to another color palette, I didn't want to waste any of the ink that was on my jelly plate, so I mopped it up with this sheet. And you can see where that color, you know, various paint colors were pulled up, and so I'm going to use it one more time, and in the meantime I just did some stamping all over it. I have no idea if this is going to look good or not, but this, you know, if it turns out, I will cut up into smaller pieces of ephemera and use in my journals down the road if I find a place for them. So that's just so I don't waste any of the coloring. And so, and as you can see, it just depends on what inks you have. I'm going to be using Oxide inks, and so the colors that you get will depend on the colors that you have. And they, if you use, you know, I usually like to use 3 or 4 different colors on the plate at one time, and they blend together after you squirt them with water, and that's how you get this, you know, mottled look with all these various colors on the same sheet. And I like that because the, you know, when the colors blend, you get a whole new color, and it's not so out of the tube, so to speak. Anyway, no two sheets that you pull, regardless of what color is on your your jelly plate, no matter what colors are on there, every time you pull a sheet off of it, it's going to be different and usually quite wonderful. So I'm going to, I think, I'm going to demo with one of these and one of these for this video. Now, you will need modeling paste. Modeling paste comes, you know, from different brands. I have in the past always used Liquitex brand, but as I went shopping, my Liquitex dried up on me, so I had to buy some new ones. And as I was comparing prices and quantities, I noticed that this brand got a lot of favorable reviews on Amazon, and I got like about 5 times the quantity for the price compared to what the Liquitex was selling for. So since it had some strong reviews, I decided to get some and try it, and I do like it. It's not quite as thick, but that's kind of nice, actually. I think it says acrylic medium, and I'm thinking this is kind of more of a soft texture. I've had other textures that were thicker, and so you have to try different things and see what works best for you. But anyway, so we're going to be using some of that. You will need some palette knives. I have a couple here. It really doesn't matter what size or shape they are, so long as you can dip them into whatever container of paste that you have. It doesn't do any good, for instance, if I had a container that had, a top that was much smaller, I would definitely have to use this because your palette knife has to go into the container. So this is a more favorite one of mine because it's more sturdy. The smaller they get, they tend to be a little bit too flexible for what we're going to do, but it has to be able to fit into your container. So I give you that warning. And later we'll be using Oxide ink, so I finally decided to put some gloves out for me to wear because I'm tired of getting my fingers all stained and ugly looking, because it takes a few days for that to go away. Alright, so let's start with this one because I think you can see the modeling paste better. Oh, you will need some stencils too, by the way. Here's some yellow paper that I bought some while ago for cardstock, and it's just way too yellow. So I'm just trying to use some of that up. Now, stencil-wise, you can, if you have some really large stencils that would cover over the whole sheet, that's great because then you don't have to move your stencil. But of course your design is going to be a duplicate of what your stencil is, and that might not suit your purposes. So I have several here that I may try using, different kinds. This has words on it. Here's something that's just these I don't really recommend using. Let me show you this. I got that one. I brought these out just to show you that for this particular purpose, because you're going to be spreading modeling paste over the stencil with the palette knife, stencils that have huge sections, huge open sections like this, aren't going to be the best to use because the open section that you would be pressing the modeling paste on is just too big to manage, and it's probably going to wind up looking really sloppy in the end. So I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend, like, even this is too open. So it's not the best stencil for this type of project, nor is this. So what you will find you'll get the best results from are stencils that have, smaller openings, less apt for the modeling paste to squeeze out underneath and just spread on you. So the smaller the design is, like this is okay. There are some little larger sections here, but they are manageable. And so I would pick, whatever stencils you have that just aren't so wide open in terms of the design. Now, you can also use smaller stencils. So I have these. But the smaller the stencil is, you will need to pick it up and move it from place to place. And so here's a stencil design that I'm considering using. I did use, I'm not sure, I did not use this on my other ones that I've done so far, so I may use that. I have a bunch of these from Tim Holtz. This one and this one are both floral designs. I don't know if you can see that too well. Okay, so there, that gives you an idea of what that looks like. It does have some fairly wide open spaces, but because it's a small stencil, it's more easily managed. Here's one that has some wildflowers on it I may use. And here are the numbered stencils that I've already used. One of these is called Numbered, and the other one is called, let me see, Countdown. I do not know which one belongs in which little folder. So Countdown and Numbers are the names of them. I've had these a while. I don't know if they're still available or not. What else have we got here? Okay, so this is just a series of letters. Okay. And these are the kind of things that I tend to motivate me, but pick out what you like, what you would like to see on a tag or postcard, whatever it is you're making, and just have some fun. You might want to put a basin of water nearby when you get through with a particular stencil. Toss it in the water. You do not want to leave your stencils with the modeling paste on them for too long a time without cleaning them, because if you let them dry, you're not going to get that modeling paste off and you will have ruined your stencil. So, make sure if you don't have a basin nearby, then as soon as you get through using a stencil, walk into your bathroom or kitchen, wherever you clean your tools, and clean your stencil right away. I do not have a basin near me because my studio is so crowded. So I will be taking quick breaks that I will edit out of this film. I'll take quick breaks to go clean my stencils from one to the next. And, just know that I'm doing that, even though you're not likely to see me doing any of that. So I'm not going to use these because I've already used them once. And I want something different. So I'm thinking maybe I might do some of these florals on one sheet, and then maybe a combination of some more ornate designs on the other one. I don't think I'm going to go with the letters. And I have these to choose from. I used this on the last go round. Yeah, I think I'm being drawn to florals and random design today. So I'm going to put these aside for the next sheet, and I'm starting with the darker base so that you'll definitely instantly be able to see the modeling paste as it's going to look on the paper. And which I don't think it matters. This side is up. So I'm just going to randomly lay this down. You can colorize your paste by adding some acrylic paint to it. So it doesn't have to be the color out of the jar. Like I say, I like this palette knife better because it's sturdier and it's easy to dip into my jar here. So now I'm not going to cover all of a tag. I don't care for that. I just want to cover sections of it. And I'm going to be real random. And I don't want to be real specific on the edges. So I'm going to try to be very random on the edges of what I lay down, but also careful as best as I can to hold my stencil in place. Now, some people will take and spray the stencil on the back with hairspray, and that helps it to hug the paper and not shift on you. So that might be something for some of you to consider if you are really concerned about getting it down and not smudging it, or you don't have any experience doing this. So that, you know, could be helpful. So I'm going to, this is hitting this tag, a little bit over there, and down here on this bookmark. So I'm going to try to kind of capture a little bit of all of that as in this first pass. You don't want to use too much of this at one time because it becomes very difficult to control. And as much as possible, you want to try not to go over the same area more than once. That's kind of difficult, but optimally, that's what we want to do. So I'm just going to throw some in here. I got off the template down there. Maybe I'll take a little over there. Okay, you can see there's some ink that I used previously that dried on the template, and some of that is coming off on my sheet here, but I'm okay with that, particularly since I'm working right now with a on a journal that the base main color of it is pink, so I'm okay with that. I will definitely have a place. And so I'm going to change. You could just move that other stencil to a different location and just repeat, but I'm going to change. I think I'll do it this way. I want my design going up. So I'm going to kind of lay this down here and throw some over here. Ooh, I got a big gob there. Not happy with that, but nothing I can do about it now. Once it's down, and you don't want to mess with it. So I'm just going to do a little bit over here. A little bit down here. And maybe catch a little bit up here. Okay. And that'll pretty well do it for that particular sheet. So I'm setting that off to dry. Okay, I took a break there and went and washed off those two stencils, and now I'm going to play around with some of these two. Maybe I'll start with my wildflowers, and I'm going to work on just this particular tag there and drop this in. When it's a representational image like this, you might want to be a little more strategic on where you lay your okay. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to flip over. No, I think we'll grab this other one real quick and kind of just drop it at an angle here to pick up two tags at once. Need a little bit more on my palette knife. Okay, so get a little of this over here and a little here. Yeah, I'm liking that. I'm going to switch back real quick to my wildflowers and drop a little bit of the top of that in there at an angle. Okay. And all we gotta do, I think, is down here. I think what'll work best is this more random design down here. Gonna move that at an angle, going across it. We'll pick up this one corner and then it'll blend off. Okay, so we've got some coverage on all of them, and that looks about right. I'm just a little concerned about this feeling a little bit boring right up in there. I'm going to try to lay just this corner down up here and throw a little bit of more interest there, right into that corner. Okay, I made a little bit of a mess down here. And lift a little bit of that out. What falls outside the outline of the tags doesn't matter. That will be discarded. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the positioning of all that. So I'm going to clean off my palette knife here and run to my sink and clean up. Whoa, I'm making a mess here. I should have come back and put the top on with clean hands, and I didn't do that. Okay, so I will take a little bit of break here, and all you want to do now is either set your sheets aside to dry, or if you want to hurry it along, as I'll be doing, you can take a heat gun to it to get this dry. This must be thoroughly dry. Let me emphasize that. Your modeling paste must be thoroughly dry on the paper before you go to the next step. So don't get anxious and jump ahead because you'll have a horrible mess if you do. So I will be right back. Okay, I just got through using my hot gun, and this one is perfectly dry. This one had this big glob that I missed, and it's still rather soft. When you have, a lot of saturation or thickness like this, you have to make sure it's really dry all the way through. And so you'll want to flip it over, and if you see any kind of saturation back here, use your hot gun to make sure it's drying from the bottom up as well as the top down. Okay, this one's going to be a while longer before I can do anything with it because I'm just worried about that glob. Now, thankfully, a good portion of it is outside the edges of my shapes, so it won't be on the final product, but I'm just concerned. I can push this down, it's still rather pliable. I think maybe I will press it down here on the sections that will be left on the tag itself, so that those aren't as high. In fact, I'm going to cut them right now. Right along that line, and then press this down here, and then cut it off in here. Because once this is thoroughly dry, it's very hard, and it is no longer, I mean, you can't manipulate it any further. So I'm able to take out a lot of that three-dimensional bulk just by pressing down on it before it is thoroughly dry, and putting my edge along there so it'll be a lot easier to cut when the time comes. Okay, this is going to have to dry longer. So now I'm ready for step 2. And I'm going to put my jelly plate right in here. I might be able to back out a little bit so you can see a wider portion of what I'm working with. Okay. I have newspaper, of course, on the bottom. And here are my Distress Oxide inks. These are from Tim Holtz. And the color palette that you will wind up with, of course, is going to be totally dependent on what colors you have to work with. And a little bit about color. Typically, I like to, as much as possible, use warm colors with other warm colors and cool colors with other cool colors, because if you cross them using warm and cool together, you could wind up with, I don't know, maybe an uglier color that you might not like. And but if that happens to you, you can re-ink your jelly plate and put another color on top of that to kind of help fix something that maybe is not to your pleasing. So here's my base, and this is floral design. So I think we're going to use some pinks, maybe some lavenders, a little bit of green. See what we got. And you'll want to have a spray bottle with water. Oxide inks are activated by water. So you put them down and then you spray them with the water, and then that's what will spread and help them to blend with each other. So I'm going to pick some picked raspberry here to kick it off with. And I'm just going to put some randomly here and there. And then let's throw a little kind of a grape seedless preserves in there. Hopefully this won't be too much of the same color. And maybe a little bit of milled lavender. This will be a lighter. You want to have some lights as well as darks. And just, randomly spreading a little bit of color over the coal. Wait, what's this down here? It's a red. I think that gives me 3 colors. Do I want... Let's try a little of this Victorian velvet here and there. It's a little bit of a warmer color, but that's okay. Alright, now I'm going to spray this with water. And you can see the bubbles forming. That tells you it's activating. And now I'm just going to take my sheet. Oh, I was going to put my gloves on. Too late. I'm already dirty. Okay. So it goes. I'm just going to lay that down there and press my paper against the jelly plate. Make a mess while I'm doing it. Not to worry, because I'm going to cover the backs of the paper anyway. Okay, so here's what we got. I'm going to set this off to dry. I wonder if I could go ahead with this. You know, for the sake of the video, I am going to go ahead with this. But I think we'll maybe use a different color there. Do I want to introduce... I think I'll introduce a little bit of teal here and there. And I talked about some green, so we'll throw a little green in there. My jelly plate, by the way, is a 9 by 12, which makes it perfectly sized. You always want your jelly plate to be a little bit bigger than your base so that you can easily get the edges covered. So now we'll reactivate. Now, because I've already pulled one print off of the pinks and lavenders, that's going to be a bit subdued, and this teal and green is going to come to the forefront. But let's see what we get. Okay, so I had some of that pinkish tone show up, and I'm going to try and pick up a little more ink in some of the places that I see are not got enough color. It's being centered around that place where that glob is. I think it's interfering with picking up some of the coloring. So we'll try a little bit more. There, we got some in there. Okay. So I'm going to pick up some along the edge up here. Okay, I'm ready to let that dry. And remember, I talked about this as being my mop-up sheet. So now's the time to mop up. I'm going to come in here and just lay that down on top. Now, I should point out, if you use some stamping on your base beforehand, make sure you use permanent ink, archive ink. So you see that added more color there. I think it dirtied it up. Not sure I'm happy with what I did there, but it's too late now. So anyway, we'll let this dry. Maybe it'll look nicer when it's dry. And now, that's all I'm going to do in this video as far as the jelly plate is concerned. So at the end, when you are truly done for the day, you'll want to take a baby wipe and use a baby wipe all over the top of your jelly plate. I don't like to leave anything there that I don't have to. You see, not everything comes off anyway, but you know, you don't want to ruin the surface of this just because you didn't take the time to clean it when you could have. And baby wipes are great for this. Okay, so that's that. And we'll put these all back. Now it's fun to work with these. You should play around with your Oxide inks beforehand so you get an idea of what colors you like working with at the same time. You know, what gives you the type of finished blended colors that is appealing to you. That's going to be different for everyone. And also to bear in mind, if you're working on a journal or several at a time, as I do, then to, you know, be aware of what are the color palettes of what you got coming up, because you want to be able to put them in a new home. Your tags or whatever you cut out, you want to be able to use in a journal fairly soon, I think. Rather than having things sit away forever until you forgot they even exist. That's what happens to me. So let's take that original one now and let's speed it along. With my hot glue gun. With my heat gun. Remember not to get too close. You can burn your paper and, you know, it'll leave a brown spot that you won't like, I guarantee it. So don't get too close. I've already made that mistake. Now when you're drying your paper, you see it's curling up on the edges. And so what you want to do, you don't want to leave it curled up. It might settle down some more as it finishes drying. But flip it over and dry it from the back. And you'll see how that helps to flatten it back out again. So it starts curling up the other way now. And before you start cutting these into the shapes you've allocated, make sure your paper, everything is thoroughly dry. Now, if you got this far and you decided that wasn't enough color, or you wanted to add another color in there, for instance, I really have no green in here. It probably would be nice to put a little green there. I'm not going to go to the time and trouble to do that here for the video, but just dry it and then, you know, put new paint, new ink on your jelly plate and add a little bit more color to it. And you should be fine. Just do it sparingly so that you don't, you don't ruin what you have already. So this wound up really more of a two-color look, white and kind of this rose pink, but that's okay. Normally I would like, at least a third color in there in the mix. That's the problem with picking colors that are too similar to each other. By the time they've blended into just one color overall. I hope you could hear me over that. So, yeah, this is nice and dry now. And so without waiting for that other one to get done, if it doesn't dry thoroughly enough for me to show you, for me to cut out the shapes while you watch, you'll at least get the idea from this one, and I'll try to show you the end result at the very end of the video. So now, you could cut these out with scissors, of course. I have some hand hilt issues that make it necessary for me to limit how much time I spend using scissors. So I'm going to do my cutting with my blade here. And if you're working with a blade, do be very careful, because it is definitely easy to cut yourself. And so you have to really pay attention to what you're doing. Oh shoot, I forgot. These are not, this cardstock I think is like 65 weight. I prefer 110, but that's too thick to go through my printer easily. So I've dropped back to 65 pound, but by itself, it's not thick enough for me to be happy with. Oh, I didn't want white. I like my tags thicker than that. So what I do is, using a glue stick, I glue everything down to a second sheet of cardstock. That hides all the mess that I made on the back as well. And if you use a light cardstock, by that I mean pastel, whether it's colored or white or off-white or gray or brown, whatever you're using, if it's light enough, it provides another place to journal on if you're making your ephemera for a junk journal, as I'm doing. So what I do is I try to remember. I don't always, as evidenced by what I just did, I don't always remember to glue a new backing sheet on at the appropriate time. It's just a whole lot easier to do the entire sheet than to glue each individual piece on a backing sheet later. That's just twice the amount of cutting that you have to do. So if you do it at this stage, then you only have to cut things out once. not 100% dry. So just, you know, if you're, obviously I'm working a little bit premature, and not everything is 100% dry, so you just have to be aware of that and handle your product with care. So you can use any glue you want, but I find the stick glue works just fine for a project like this and doesn't take forever. So now we're going to have to recut this slit. So we cut the backing sheet at the same time. There we go. Okay, now we're cooking with grease. Try to work with a sharp blade. I tend to use mine way too long, and then it takes a lot more effort and a lot more passes to get a clean cut. So because I have a double thickness here, I probably would have been better to put a new blade in here, but I didn't. Okay, the reveal is coming. There. Is that not beautiful? That's such a pretty color. It's a combination of a peachy color mixed with a rose and a little bit of lavender. Just really gives you a rich finish. And really all you have to do at this stage, once you cut them out, is put a hole in and put some trim up there. Isn't that not beautiful? Now, you see, what I love about the jelly plate is this is so random. I couldn't have created that if I tried. It just happens. The water activated ink just, you know, it does its own thing, and you have no idea what it's going to do or where, and it's so beautiful when it happens. And it's not something you could have planned on happening. Maybe something great happens, maybe it's not so great. That's why I love this process so much, is just so much that is out of your hands. You just can't control it, and that's actually a good thing. You will, I guarantee you're going to wind up with something much better than you could have planned for. And here's a nice little, beautiful little bookmark. Okay, we got 2 to go here. Let's separate them so we don't accidentally cut into one of them. And this will give us a medium-sized tag. Now that's just leftover, but that could be turned into a bookmark very easily. It doesn't have any of the design on it, but that doesn't mean you can't glue, you know, some butterflies or something on top and have another piece of ephemera that's just gorgeous. You can also glue different pieces. For instance, I could take this cut off that has a little bit of the modeling paste on it, and I could glue it right down there along the edge, and you see what a difference that makes. Or you could take a piece like this, a cutting, and maybe glue that on at an angle. You see, there's just many different things you can do with something like that to give you yet another wonderful piece of ephemera to use in your journal or whatever it is you're making. And so now, here's this smaller. I just think that's gorgeous. I love how it moves from the darker pinks up here into just seeing some of this mottled light beige paper in the background against the white of the modeling paste. Now some people, you know, if you have a design that's big enough and worth it, some people will even take this after it's done and with a small, very small paintbrush go in and deliberately paint the flowers, the stems, you know, another color, and you know, just paint on top of that. It will, if you use acrylic paint, I think that would be the best to get it to adhere, and you know, watercolor's just gonna maybe be too thin, too watery to show up and dry. It might puddle on you, whereas, you know, a little thicker paint, a gouache or acrylic, you know, you could go in there and highlight some of those flowers, not do them all, just a few, maybe a focal point, you know, right up in here. So, yeah, those are possibilities too to think about. You take that, you can glue that on, you see, and see how you can easily change something up just by what you put on it. You know, you can attach anything to a background. Goodness, you could even draw or paint or add a sticker of some sort, some floral sticker that's on, you know, maybe washi, a washi tape sticker, something that's transparent yet has a strong image. You could stamp words on, just use an acrylic ink so it's permanent. You know, unique and beautiful, each one a little bit different than the one before. So, see what we've got here? And we've even got this over here. And bits and pieces. Got all that from a single sheet of cardstock. I hope you love this, because I sure do. And like I said, all it needs now is a hole and some ribbon or trim, whatever you like to use to finish off your tag. Lots of great possibilities if you just you know, play around, have fun, and explore and try new things. Be sure and visit my Etsy shop if you are interested in acquiring the digital templates for what I was making, and that'll just save you the effort of having to do all that part of the job yourself. That's the least fun part of all. All right, we are pretty much done. These were the original tags that I showed you at the beginning of this video, and I got all of this from one sheet of cardstock, and then these were from a different sheet, slightly different coloring. These are lighter weight. I did not back these because the back of that cardstock was so beautiful. I just did not have the heart to cover that over with a second sheet. So I left these. They're very thin, very, pliable. Not my favorite way to do a tag, but oh my gosh, that was just so gorgeous. I didn't have the heart to hide that forever. So, okay, those were those. And then now let's take a look at what we actually made while we were filming this video. Now here's the set that I got from the first sheet of cardstock that I showed you. 2 large tags, a medium one, a small one, and a bookmark. I have not yet put the the trim on these. I'll do that in a minute, but I wanted to get this video finished up. So you've seen these before. Now let me show you the one that was drying. So here we go. I got one large tag, and these had the random, kind of a Florentine design on them. And I did put some sari silk up here. So we got a large, 2 mediums, 2 smalls, and then I had all these little extra bits that could be a bookmark. And remember that real bulky blob that I got there? I pressed that down. That's here on this, and it wound up down here, and I had pressed that down while it was still just a little bit moist yet, and so it flattened it out. And the same over here. So here we have a bookmark, and then these could be, bits and bobs, things that I glue onto something else as, I happen to need something. So that's what I got from the second cardstock. Pretty cool, huh? And quite different from these. And then, do you remember the sheet where I had hand stamped a bunch of stuff on it, and then I was using it to mop up my my jelly plate, and I wasn't happy with the second mop up that I did? Well, after it dried, I then took some of some really faint pink and some kind of golden ink pads, and I went over the paper with that to kind of smooth it out. And boy, did I wind up with, is that not boho? So, and this was just the mop-up sheet, okay? Just some beautiful colors, multicolors thrown together and left to blend. And see here, you can see where, this was from the jelly plate, so it looks kind of blobbish. This looks like an ink stain over here, so it's perfectly vintaged for me already. And so I guess I'll have to make another boho journal. I've made 2 so far, and but that's what this says to me. It may say something different to you, but it just seems to be very perfect. And then I use some sari thread. This is a thick thread here, and then a finer thread here for the smaller ones. And you know, that's what I tied them off with. It's all sari silk, just a different type. So there we have it. What I do with everything. Okay, so we got those, we got these, we got these, and then from what I did off camera, we have this and this. So a great way to make some really personable handmade tags or other ephemera of your choice, and just have fun and create a way and surprise yourself with what you're able to come up with. So don't forget to visit my Etsy shop if you're interested in acquiring these so you don't have to make them yourself. And I have lots of other resources there that might interest you. And so thanks for being here. I appreciate it. If you like this content, please support the channel with your likes and your comments, and share the video with friends and family, anybody that might be interested in crafting and being creative. And I hope you got some ideas and inspiration from this, and it's my pleasure to share what I'm doing with you. That said, this is Miss Darling calling this a wrap. Bye-bye.